most of my videos are geared towards Masters and PhD students, and for my 1 or 2 viewers who are undergrads, they will often say to me, "Bill, you have neglected us for too long." Well, I neglect you no more, my friends. Look at this, the final year project for all of you undergrad people. So, what is this slideshow going to consist of? So it's going to consist of me basically reading this lovely text. The final year project, often referred to as a thesis or dissertation, is a significant component of undergrad studies in Ireland. It serves as a culmination of the student's academic journey, allowing them to apply the knowledge and skills acquired throughout their program to a specific research or practical project. Now, Bill, you're not just going to read off the notes, are you? You're going to actually help us. I will, all in good time, my friends. The final year project is designed to demonstrate the student's ability to independently research, analyze, and present a substantial piece of work. And you know what? It allows students to explore a specific area of their field in depth and contribute to the existing body of knowledge. But even more so, it prepares students for master's work. Even if you don't want it, you're still going on to master's level, okay? Now, projects can vary across disciplines and programs. They may include traditional research dissertations, laboratory-based experiments, design projects, software development, business plans, and more. The type of project often depends on the student's major and the requirements of the specific program. Many projects require a comprehensive review of existing literature related to the chosen topic. This helps students understand the current state of knowledge and identify gaps for their research. Depending on the nature of the project, students may need to collect and analyze data, conduct experiments, or develop software solutions. Rigorous methodologies and ethical considerations are important in this phase. Successfully completing the final year project is often a valuable achievement and can enhance a student's employability or provide foundation for future academic pursuits. Now, but first you have to write it, okay? So here's where the good knowledge comes in here, okay? So we have to get by that boring Bill reading the slideshow element of the videos that everyone loves, you know. But look, I'm not going to leave you out, okay? Here we go, look. Here's some tips. Know the structure of the final year project, okay? So this video is going to be good for people who are facing into doing their final year project. And they're kind of saying to themselves, I have no idea what I'm doing. There's loads of information out there about it, but I just want a 10 to 15 minute video on it. Well, my friends, there's going to be lots of information out there on the final year project. It's going to be too much information actually. So what people want is they want a 10 to 15 minute video on the essential elements of it, the basics, the tips and tricks of it all, okay? When you're doing these things, it's important to know what the final version looks like, what the outcome should be. So I'm going to show you basically what a finished version of a final year project looks like in skeleton form. I'm going to get you to keep this skeleton in mind when you're doing your final year project, okay? Now, I promised everyone I'd give them an example of a final year project. So here's the key ingredients of what that's made up of. So of course we have the title page, we then have the abstract. So these are the preliminary pages, the pages that come before the main body chapters. You have your table of contents, list of figures and tables, and then you have your list of abbreviations. Now these will obviously, depending on your department, depending on your college, you might have abstract coming after the acknowledgements or table of contents coming first. So this is not to say that, make sure your abstract is first. It's just to show you that, look, these are the main pages you would expect to see. And then of course you have your introduction, lit review chapters. Now these can be put into one. Sometimes you can just have an introduction chapter that also functions as a lit review. So don't be too worried if you're kind of, you're halfway through your final year project and you're like, oh my God, I don't have a literature review chapter. It's probably stuck into this one. Again, just ask your supervisor what's the best method. This is the usual thing I see. So you shouldn't treat, what I'm saying here as gospel in terms of the structure. But I would say when in doubt, just talk to your supervisor. But generally you would have an introduction and literature review. If they're not separate chapters, definitely separate sections. A case study, if it is something you're doing, if your final year project is on a particular company you want to focus on, or a particular industry, the sort of the demographics of that company, its main sort of functions, and the relevance of your study to that company, you would stick it in this chapter here. Then you have the methodology chapter. So if you're doing a qualitative or a quantitative or a mixed method, you may do a systematic review of a particular sort of topic. And in that case, it's going to look a little bit different from this. So this is mainly for people who are doing primary research. Again, the methodology will be qualitative, quantitative, or mixed. So those are the main ones. There are other types, obviously, but whatever type you use will go into this chapter. Then you have the results and findings chapter, and then you have discussion and analysis. You can combine these two sometimes, depending. You have your conclusion and recommendation chapter then, and then look, you have your references and bibliography, they go there, and then you have any appendices you use, like consent forms, interview questions, or any type of ethical clearance. It will go into that section there. So we can see here there's just a little bit more detail on what's in the individual chapters. As I mentioned here, oftentimes this is subsumed into the lit review, although I think it's good practice to have your own chapter for it, okay? So in the introductory chapter, you would have a background and context, the problem statement, the rationale, why you're doing the study, and that section will usually segue from a section in this background, which will say that there's a gap or there's a deficiency that needs to be filled in. You will then dovetail from your rationale, so finding that gap and saying why you should be filling it. You're going to say, well, look, here's my research question or hypothesis, here's the objectives that help me answer that question or test that hypothesis. You can mention the significance of your study then, and then the scope and the limitations of your study then. Often then you can end off on a thesis outline, which is a summary. Chapter 2 is about this, chapter 3 is about that. Very short, succinct summary of what's to come. Your literature review chapter will obviously include a review of the relevant literature related to your research topic. Now that's very important, that the literature you review stays within the confines of whatever your research topic is on, whatever your research question is. And this is basically where you're going to identify any gaps in existing knowledge. So if you're doing a big literature review and you're thinking to yourself, do you know what? None of these studies, although they do have some overlap with what I'm doing, none of them are touching upon the exact point I want to touch upon. You can mention it here. And then any sort of stuff you're doing on theoretical frameworks comes into use here. Now you can have a separate chapter for your theoretical framework if you want, but generally it is a review of literature technically. So I would say it's best to throw it in there. Your methodology chapter then will include research design, participants, anything to do with sampling, data collection methods, survey, interview, data analysis techniques. You could use SPSS for statistical analysis, Braun and Clark, very famous for thematic analysis. And then you mention any ethical considerations. Do people, are they protected? Are you interviewing them? Is any children involved, or any sort of people who may need additional help there, or people who may be sensitive. So you just be mindful of that. Then we have the data presentation findings chapter, presentation of your findings using tables, graphs, charts, if it's quantitative, or quotes if it's qualitative, or mix if it's both of them. And then we have our discussion and analysis chapter, which is basically taking your findings and just comparing it with the previous literature. And that's all you're doing in that chapter. That's the primary function of that chapter, is to compare your results with previous studies. And anything to do with the research question, interpretation of the results, that comes in the conclusion chapter. So you provide a summary of the key findings, and more importantly, a summary that is in tandem with your research question and objective. So how does your key findings, your interpretation of them, how does your discussion impact your research question, and how is it answering it? Then you can dovetail from that into your contributions to field, practical and theoretical implications, any sort of practical recommendations. Again, if you're doing a case study on something, you can refer all this back to the case study, what kind of learnings there are that you can bring back to that company, or that you can provide to that company if you are indeed looking at a specific case study there. So that's just a brief overview of the different chapters. You'll then sort of have your references and your bibliography and your appendices then, as I mentioned in the other ones. So that was the structure of it, okay? So now you're probably saying to me, we know the structure, Bill. Where's the tips and tricks you've been giving the postgrads? Let's go. Tip number 1, okay? Start early and plan. What does that mean? Okay, so begin planning and working. Let me get the old highlighter out here, okay? Begin planning and working on your project as early as possible. This allows you to manage your time effectively and handle any unexpected challenges that may arise. Create a project plan with specific tasks, deadlines, and milestones. Break down the project into manageable stages, making it easier to track progress and stay organized. You know that skeleton I got everyone to look at, okay? Do out a skeleton for your own project, okay? Over each of those chapters you could put like, okay, I'm going to do this one in January, or this one in March, or wherever the thing is due, okay? Break it down even more than that. So you have subheadings within those chapters, okay? So let's say one of your subheadings in your methodology chapter is data analysis. You put a little thing that says 1 to 2 weeks. And that's really going to help you, because there's no point just saying I'm going to start at page 1 and then I'll finish whenever, because you won't finish it, okay? Break down the headings, all the headings you need in it, okay? The structure I showed you there is going to be pretty much identical to your own structure, okay? So don't stray too far from it. When you have all the headings down, you can then say to yourself, okay, I've planned for this, I know how much time is needed, and I know exactly you know, where I'm at any given point in my timeline or time frame. Here's tip number 2. Have clear objectives. That sort of touched upon what I just said here. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my microphone to make sure I'm clear as a whistle. Have clear objectives. So clearly define the objectives of your project. What do you aim to achieve? What problems are you trying to solve? Having well-defined objectives will guide your research and project development. Okay, so know what you're doing, essentially. Here we go. Tip number 3, drum roll. Don't go it alone, okay? There's that sage Dr. Bill advice everyone loves. Don't go it alone, okay? Maintain regular communication with your project supervisor. Seek feedback on your progress, discuss any challenge you're facing, and ask for guidance when needed, okay? Be open to feedback from your peers, that's your friends, preferably intelligent friends. You know, don't go asking your friends that are never in college or who never turn up to anything, okay? So I don't mean to diss the people that didn't go to college, like most of my peer group in college, but try and latch on to the most intelligent people in your course and befriend them. And of course your supervisor, be open to being friendly with your supervisor. You know, they're human, you know, they want to help you. I guarantee you, if you go to them with that skeleton structure I just showed you and say, look, I've created a skeleton structure of what I'm going to do, and here's a rough time frame, they're going to be delighted. They're going to love that sort of stuff, because they themselves are beholden to a horrible lack of time and a system that just robs them of their time. So if you go to them and say, here, look, I've actually created a roadmap for what I'm going to do, they're just going to love you. They're really going to be happy with that sort of stuff. Constructive feedback can help improve the quality of your project and enhance your understanding of the subject matter. Constructive feedback, very important. You don't want any destructive feedback. Destructive feedback is what, you know, some supervisor would give you, saying, this is awful, needs more X. But where do I get X? And how do I utilize X? Okay. So you won't always get that. You'll get it from me though. I'm very good at constructive feedback. Okay. So I'm your new best friend in this sort of scenario. Okay. I'm the supervisor everyone wishes they had, but won't get, unfortunately. So there's a little so I'm going to be your best friend in this scenario, okay? I'm going to be the supervisor that I'm going to step up to the plate, okay? I'm going to be your stepfather slash step... Oh God, I can't say that. So I'm going to step up to the plate here, okay? I'm going to be the supervisor that you've never had before, okay? I'm going to be your cool uncle. It's going to be mostly cringe, okay? But I'm going to give you information anyway, okay? There's no possible outcome in this that makes me look cool. Here we go, okay? Tip number 4. Manage time effectively. Very important. That's why I gave you the skeleton structure there and the little time frame. Break down your project into smaller tasks and allocate time efficiently. Avoid procrastination. I did not mean to procrastinate there. It's very. I needed some water for my my throat. I need to be able to talk for 7 hours continuously doing these videos. Avoid procrastination. Okay, so that's what I just did there was procrastination. And set aside dedicated time each day or week to work on your project. Regularly back up your project files. Very important. Okay. Don't be like me when I was in college, where I decided to store everything onto one thing, which I then subsequently lost. Consider using cloud storage or external drives to keep multiple copies of your work. I always say just email it constantly to yourself. So always attach whatever work you're doing and just keep emailing it to yourself. You'll be fine. It's normal to face challenges during the final year project. Stay positive, manage stress effectively, and don't hesitate to seek support from friends, family, or university services. So I just mentioned all that in the last one, okay? But they do overlap, okay? Tip number 5. Know what you're building. Okay, so look, there's going to be some overlap here. You know, I probably should have thought ahead when I was doing these slides. Okay, but look, we won't blame you just yet. Okay. Now the car analogy. Okay. If you've been watching my videos, as I'm sure you haven't, the car analogy is very, very important. It's very near and dear to me. Okay. It essentially amounts to me asking you to build a car without you knowing what a car looks like. But I give you some basic information like there's 4 circular rubber things that help drive the car. There's going to be doors on it, and it's going to have an engine, and it's going to have windscreen wipers, blah blah blah. Okay. Now, if you don't know what a car looks like, I'm very interested to know what you would build or what you would draw, because it wouldn't look like a car. You would, like, the 4 wheels would be shoved together, the door would be somewhere else. Windscreen wipers maybe on the front like 2 big spikes. And think of your thesis using that, you know, what I just said there. Okay, someone says to you, go and write a final year project, or go and write a thesis, or go and write a dissertation. If you don't know what it looks like, you're just going to go build it into the wind, essentially. That's why that skeleton is very, very important to have, because if you know what you're building, you'll build it much quicker and you won't stray from building absolute nonsense. Okay, so you won't stray from the what the thesis should look like. And that's why I always, my favorite line ever is copy the structure and form of other final year projects. Okay, go and grab some final year projects. I'm going to show you a great website you can go to. There's many of them, but I mean, I'm going to give you one example of it, where you can go and you can download other people's final year projects. Do not plagiarize them. Do not copy the whole thing and submit that. That's not what I'm saying, okay? Just look at the format, look at the skeleton of their table of contents, look what the headings they have, and say to yourself, you know what? I now know what the project looks like. So I'm just going to copy the structure and the form, okay? Not the project. Don't copy the project. Copy the structure and the form. So I'm going to show you a website, and there's many different types of website, but I'm going to show you one specifically where you can find examples of the final year project. So I promised a quick look at some examples. So here's the website I was talking about, and the link is down in the description. So this is DBS, and they basically have a collection of bachelor's final year projects you can go and peruse and have a look and see. Okay, so let's say your own particular thesis was in business and management. You get a very handy list in here of everyone's thesis. Okay, they're all in Word and PDF form. You can just go down and check them. There's obviously going to be some differences between them, but the structure will more or less be there. They're great as well if you're trying to figure out, you know, well, how do I do my lit review? What gets through? And there's different standards for every different type of college and every different type of department. So don't rely on these as gospel for what you should do, but they do give you a very handy idea of what's out there and what people are trying to do. Another way you can do it is just put in final year project, the field during, let's say, social science Ireland, and then put the word PDF after it. You'll get access to more files that way. But I say you can't really go wrong here You know, if you're just trying to say, well, this is my field, this is my research topic, and you can do it by, you know, you can browse by title and subject. So yeah, you can check by subject, by title, you can do by author. Obviously the author one is going to be trickier because obviously, you know, they're not famous people, they're people just have done their thesis. But yeah, you go back into the list here and there's all, you know, counseling, psychotherapy, journalism, law, literature, drama and film, philosophy, psychoanalysis, social science, social studies. You can look for, you know, mixed, qualitative, quantitative, that sort of stuff. And a lot of these will be case studies that people bring back to businesses they work in or businesses they would like to work in one day. So yeah, there you go. So that's a good example. The link is in the description. If you're ever wondering past the slideshow I've given you, well, what does it look like? What's expected of me? You can do no worse than going through all the ones that have actually made it through, that have been examined, that have been corrected, and that made it onto this database. So that's your final year project basically. It's not too hard, you know, it's fairly straightforward. I think if you're ever stuck, just follow the examples. There's not, you know, just don't deviate too much from the structure there. Your thesis will obviously be different from other people's thesis, but once you have the makeup that I mentioned here, and you don't deviate too much from that, you're kind of onto a winner. Okay, so follow what I've said here in the slides. And if you're ever stuck, just have a look at someone else's thesis. The link is in the description of how to do that, okay?